that always seemed to be lost in distant thoughts. Jack and I had never been close. Maybe because of the age gap, or maybe because when he was little, he used to cling to his mother during family gatherings, while I was always the busy one, bustling around the kitchen. But now, with just the two of us in the house, I began to notice more about the way Jack existed in the space. Gentle, silent, and polite in a way rarely seen at his age. That afternoon, after finishing up some office work I had brought home, I decided to reward myself with a quiet moment by soaking in the tub. The hot water and lavender essential oil melted away the tension of a long week. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and let everything dissolve in the warm steam. Through the sound of the water, I could hear faint noises from the living room, soft music playing from someone's phone, and quiet footsteps moving around. It was probably Jack. He never made noise. Even when climbing the stairs, he always tried not to make a sound. I found myself smiling silently. It had been a long time since I last felt the presence of someone else in this house, which usually only echoed with the sounds of the kitchen and the washing machine. That feeling wasn't bothersome. It was comforting, like a gentle reminder that I wasn't truly alone. When I stepped out of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around me, Jack was sitting at the dining table, reading something on a tablet. He looked up when he saw me, gave a slight nod, and smiled. "Would you like me to make you some tea, Aunt Emily?" he asked, his voice hoarse and deeper than I expected for his age. I paused for a moment, then nodded. "Peppermint, please." He stood up and walked into the kitchen. His movements were slow and steady. I watched him quietly, wondering when the shy little boy had grown into such a calm, composed young man. I felt something stir, not romance, but a reminder of what it meant to be accompanied. That night, the weather turned cold all of a sudden. The sky over Tuscany drew in clouds, and the wind rustled through the pine arches outside the window, sounding like whispers from a distant memory. Jack and I had dinner together in a quiet space with only the soft clinking of chopsticks against bowls and the gentle whistling of the kettle in the kitchen. We didn't talk much, but it wasn't awkward. The silence was comforting, like a thick cotton blanket laid over a long day. While I washed the dishes, Jack stood behind me, neatly packing away the leftovers. Everything unfolded as if we had lived together for a long time, though in reality, this was only his third night staying over. After we finished cleaning up, I was about to head upstairs when Jack called out to me. "Aunt Emily, there's a full moon tonight. I'm thinking of going out to the balcony to sketch a little. Would you like to join me?" I hesitated for a beat, then nodded softly. "Sure, let me make some more tea." We sat on a stone-tiled balcony, each holding a cup of tea. In front of us were the quiet, dark vineyards, covered in a faint layer of moonlight, like a charcoal drawing etched with light. Jack had brought a small sketchbook. He sat sketching silently, while I simply stared into the stillness before us. "I like this hour the most," Jack said, his voice low and slow, "because it doesn't ask you to answer anything." I looked at him and saw the moonlight falling across his cheek, highlighting the mature features I hadn't noticed before. "So do I replied. "In that moment, no one expects you to be strong." We looked at each other, and in that moment, I realized Jack was no longer the little nephew from years ago. He was a young man with a quiet heart and wounds he had never spoken of. "Do you miss home often?" I asked, my voice softening with the breeze. Jack nodded, his eyes still fixed on the page. "I do, but not because of the people. It's because I miss the feeling of being heard." I didn't know how to respond. I simply placed my hand gently on the edge of the bench near his, a very small gesture, but when Jack quietly rested his hand lightly over mine, I chose not to move away. He didn't look at me, and I didn't look at him. We sat quietly, our hands resting near each other, not speaking, just being, like two strangers who had found a shared breath within the stillness that had stretched across so many years. And on that cold autumn night, under the faint moonlight, a certain emotional door, one I thought had long been locked, gently creaked open. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the old pine branches, spilling onto the moss-covered roof tiles of the ancient house. I woke up later than usual, perhaps because sleep had come more gently than it had on previous nights. When I went down to the kitchen, the faint scent of toasted bread mixed with the aroma of coffee, a rare kind of tenderness for a morning in this quiet hillside place. Jack was sitting at the wooden table by the window, pencil in hand, deeply focused on his drawing. He didn't notice me until I softly asked, "What are you drawing?" Jack looked up, his eyes lighting with an adorably flustered expression. I didn't think you would be up this early. I was just sketching random things. I smiled and sat down across from him. Can I see? Jack hesitated for a moment, then flipped open the sketchbook. The first page was a drawing of the olive garden behind the house, bare branches, ancient stones along the path, all rendered in soft pencil strokes, simple but full of emotion. The next page made me pause. It was me, standing by the window, holding a coffee cup, my hair slightly tousled by the early breeze. The light was captured in overlapping strokes, as delicate as mist, gentle, honest, and hauntingly real. Jack, I didn't mean to draw it, but that image just wouldn't leave me, Jack interrupted, his gaze dropping, not daring to meet mine. You carry a kind of quiet strength. It feels familiar, like something I didn't realize I missed. I didn't say anything. Not because I was embarrassed, but because something in my chest stirred in a way I couldn't explain. There was something in Jack's words I couldn't deny. I was seen for the first time. Not for my role, but as a person who mattered. Jack continued flipping through the sketchbook, and on every page was a corner of the house, the old bookshelf, the tea table on the porch, even the outline of my back while I cooked, all evoking something familiar, serene, like memories given form. When did you start drawing these? I asked quietly. Jack pressed his lips together. Since the day I arrived, I didn't want to forget a single moment here. I felt my throat tighten. Sometimes we don't know what we mean to someone until we see ourselves through their eyes. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me, even when I'd forgotten who I was. Jack smiled softly, his gaze gentle. You've always been my safe place, or you made the house feel like home. I didn't reply. I simply stood, quietly poured Jack another cup of hot tea as a silent way of saying, I'm still here. The story between us, never defined, was still being written in every pencil stroke, every glance, in every gentle silence, just like this one. That afternoon, the sky suddenly turned ashen gray. Low clouds draped over the hills like a cold silk scarf, making the already quiet atmosphere of Tuscany feel even more blurred and distant. I was trimming the last roses of the season in the garden when a rumble of thunder echoed faintly from afar, deep, dull, and soft. Strange. It was already early November, yet the rain was coming. I stepped onto the porch just in time for the first drops to fall, heavy, fast, cold. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves rose from the vineyard behind the house, stirring something restless inside me. How long had it been since I last smelled true rain? Jack stepped out from inside wearing a light jacket and holding 2 cups of hot ginger tea. He handed me one, his eyes shining behind the gentle steam rising from the cup. I guessed you like the smell of rain too, he said. I smiled, accepting the tea with both hands. Not just like it. I miss it. Jack tilted his head. Miss what exactly? I was about to say the younger days, but I stopped. I wasn't really sure if that was what I missed or if it was someone. We sat down on the wooden bench beneath the porch, watching the rain pour through the row of pine trees ahead. Neither of us spoke for a while, only the sound of wind rustling through dry branches, the soft patter of rain, and the faint warmth of spiced tea carried in the breeze. Then Jack spoke, his voice deeper than usual. The day my father left, I didn't cry, but I always remembered the feeling of you holding me. You didn't say anything, just sat there like this. I looked up at him, the memory returned clearly, like a painting once carefully hidden. Jack, 9 years old, curled up in my lap beneath the porch as the rain came down. I couldn't say anything back then because I myself was breaking inside. That day, Jack continued, I felt like there was only one person in the world who stayed, and it was you. I wanted to say something, but my throat tightened. Jack placed his tea down and quietly pulled a small photo from his coat pocket. A printed sketch of me sitting on the steps, holding an old umbrella, my gaze distant. The lines were soft and delicate, just like the way memories cling to us. Not clearly defined, yet always there. I drew this last year, Jack said, but I never dared to show you. I was afraid you'd forgotten the things I still remember. I held the photo, my hands trembling slightly. For a moment, I saw myself again, reflected in the eyes of someone who had held a quiet gratitude for her presence. The rain outside hadn't stopped, but inside me something had eased, as if the wall between two generations, two old wounds, two silent lonelinesses, had been gently washed away by the rain. I turned to Jack, my gaze no longer avoiding his. Thank you for remembering, for still being here. He simply nodded, as if that silence alone was enough to hold on to something precious between two people who once thought they had drifted too far apart. The next morning, the sun rose late. Mist still hovered among the old pine trees, as if the night had kept all its silence just for this morning. I woke in a hazy state, unsure if it was because I had slept deeply the night before or because something inside me had finally let go, something I had clung to for so many years. Jack wasn't home. On the kitchen table was a small folded note, placed beside a sprig of purple aster, the last of seasoned flower I had loved since I was a young girl. My heart tightened slightly when I saw Jack's familiar handwriting, gently slanted. I sat down and opened the note. Dear Eleanor, I'm sorry for leaving early without saying anything. Yesterday was the first time I felt you truly saw me. Not as an adult sees a child, but as two people walking through a shared season of life. I've carried things in my heart for a long time without knowing what to call them. All I know is that every time I'm near you, I feel calm, light, and seen. Something I haven't felt since my father left. I know those feelings may have confused you. And I also understand that in this world, there are emotions that aren't meant to be spoken aloud, only to exist quietly and gently, like the rain yesterday afternoon. I'll be heading back to Florence for a few days to finish the drawings I left undone, to sort through my thoughts and the gratitude I haven't been able to put into words for you. If one day you read this letter and feel a soft warmth in your heart, then please believe this. Among all the people who have passed through your life, there was once a young man who held a quiet gratitude for all you gave me. In his own way, thank you for staying. I folded the letter carefully like a keepsake. In the small kitchen, with the scent of slightly burnt toast and sunlight just beginning to filter through the wooden window frame, a gentle warmth slowly spread inside me. Not love, but a quiet understanding between two people who had once drifted alone. A rare kind of understanding not born of time, but of shared intensity and loneliness. I placed the aster into an old glass jar. Its soft purple stood out against the bare wooden table. Outside, the leaves had begun to fall more heavily. The late-season wind slipped across the porch, carrying with it the earthy scent of damp soil and pine bark. I didn't cry, I didn't regret, I simply felt my heart sink and then gently lighten, like the last leaf falling softly without a sound. Some people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to remind us that we were once seen, once understood, and once loved in the purest way imaginable. Tuscany entered its final days of autumn with a stillness that felt almost sacred. The rows of grapevines in front of my house had shed all their leaves, leaving behind bare, twisted branches tangled in the wind. There were no more sounds of Jack coming down the stairs each morning, no more gentle window openings as he made coffee, no more soft clicks of his camera echoing through the garden. The house had returned to its natural rhythm, quiet, steady, and familiar, like the ticking of the wall clock. But now, every room, every shadowed corner carried a trace of something, not regret, but resonance, like a quiet melody playing somewhere in the back of the mind, gentle and unforgettable. I still brewed espresso each morning with the same care as if it were a ritual. On the table by the window, the glass vase still held the sprig of purple aster Jack had left behind. The flower had dried, but its color had not faded. I hadn't replaced it, perhaps because in that dried bloom was a reminder. The most beautiful things aren't defined by how long they last, but by the moment when they were wholly, purely themselves. From time to time, I still received short postcards from Jack, sent from Florence, from Venice, sometimes from little towns he passed through on his travels. Each postcard carried only a film photograph of leaf-covered streets, slightly ajar windows, or simply a hand resting gently on aged wooden surfaces. No words. But I understood. I don't know if Jack still holds the same feelings he once did, but I know I do, not in pain, but in gratitude. Grateful that once, at the end of a distant autumn, someone had touched the deepest part of me. Not to possess it, but to understand and then quietly leave. Some people are like that. They don't come to stay, but to remind us that we are still capable of feeling, still capable of living, and still worthy of being seen, of being loved in a way that is entirely our own. That afternoon, I stepped out onto the porch and sat on the wooden chair where Jack and I had last sat together. The wind moved across the rooftop, rustling through the old pine trees behind the house. One final leaf from the vine let go and fell to the brick courtyard, softly, like an unspoken farewell. I smiled, because I understood some seasons passed through us not to change everything, but to remind us we were still alive, like a fragile ray of sunlight, tender and forever unfading. I no longer wait for autumn to return like I used to, because I know now the most beautiful seasons aren't the ones that truly exist in a calendar year, but the ones that once touched our hearts, leaving behind a nameless, colorless mark that never fades. Jack is gone, just like how young people often leave, setting off to find their true selves. But in this old stone house, among walls etched with time, amid the scent of morning coffee and sunlight slanting through the window glass, I can still feel the warmth of the last leaves of autumn. A season that bore the quiet presence of a young man who stepped into my life, not to change everything, but simply to remind me I am still alive. Some connections don't need definition, just kindness and distance. And memory run deep enough that a single glance, a gentle touch, a photo tucked quietly in a drawer is enough to preserve a lifetime of feeling. Each morning, I still water the plants, still wait for the light to pierce through the dry grapevines, and sometimes there's still a postcard lying quietly in the mailbox. No return address, no signature, just a familiar scene, seen through the eyes of someone who once saw me. As if I had never known sadness. I need nothing more. Because some encounters don't last a lifetime, but are enough to make the rest of life quieter, softer, and whole. The last leaves of autumn have passed, but my heart, it remains.